Good morning, everyone. This is the Friday, April 17th meeting of the School Building Committee. It's so nice to see all of your faces, even though we're not at our usual table. So I am first going to do a roll call attendance. Ken Aries.
Here.
Brian Baer.
Here.
Allison Borchers.
Here.
Chris Coleman.
Here.
Sarah Cronin.
Here.
John Cummings.
Here.
Charlie Donahue. Hi, Charlie. Can you unmute and say hi? Oh, still don't have you.
Thank you.
I'm going to come back to you, Charlie. If you can unmute, I'll come back to you. Pam Dukeman.
Here.
Abby Hanscom.
Here.
Nancy Hyde.
Here.
Lema Jean-Baptiste.
Here.
Josepha Jowdy.
Here.
Carol Lewis. I don't see her, so I don't think Carol's joined us yet. Michelle Miller. I don't see her either. Tony Mullen.
Here.
Emily Parks.
Here.
And Kate Scales.
Here.
Great. All right, Charlie, I'm coming back to you. I see you've unmuted.
Here.
Thank you. Okay. So first, I'd like to recognize the live stream that's happening to provide real-time public access to the activities of the School Building Committee. It's available online at www.westwood.k12.ma.us/live. The meeting is also being recorded for later broadcast on Westwood's Media Center platforms. As always, we'd like to thank Westwood Media Center for helping us out with that. Getting into the chair's report, update on project and process. So as you recall from last meeting, we discussed the fact that we were finalizing the PDP for submission to the MSBA. That has been submitted and the MSBA has recognized receipt of that. So that's one thing that we have checked off, which is great. A lot of great work on that report. And we are currently in the phase where we're working on the next submission, which is the PSR, where we are whittling down or fine tuning all of the 7 shortlisted options. And by we, I mean the architects. And they are going to be, they're working on the designs. You'll see a little bit of some of the changes today that they've done. Nothing dramatic, but just some reorientation and some additions. And the next step for this group is today we're going to look at the evaluation criteria that the evaluation criteria subcommittee has come up with. You'll see it's more extensive than the criteria we used when we evaluated all 15 options. And then the evaluation subcommittee will run the 7 options through the evaluation criteria and come back to us, I believe, at our May 29th meeting with its recommendation for what it believes is the final option based on the evaluation criteria. So that's on today's agenda. And then the other thing I wanted to mention in terms of updates is our next public forum is April 30th. We've been working with Westwood Media Center to figure out how best to conduct a community forum. And we did a test run yesterday of a Zoom webinar. And Melinda and Connor were extremely helpful. And we thought that, the people on the call thought it went really well. And I think that's the platform we're going to use. It's going to allow the public to join via Zoom. The only people on the screen will be the presenters and the panelists. So we won't see the members of the public. And for the members of the public to submit questions, they can do almost like a real-time chat where they submit a question. The moderator, who will probably be Melinda from Westwood Media Center, will be organizing and directing the questions to the presenter. And we think that's the easiest, the fastest, and the most efficient way to get the public's input. If people don't have internet access, they can call into the meeting. They won't be able to see the visual presentation, but they can listen, and they can also, there's a way for them to signal on the phone that they have a comment or a question. It seems like it hopefully will work well. And that's on April 30th at 7 p.m. More information will be going out about that. Finally, I just wanted to talk about COVID-19 and the effects it's having on this process. So far, I feel that our timing has been good in that we're not in a construction phase yet. We're really just in a design and submission phase, which has allowed this process to continue pretty much uninterrupted. We're still on schedule. We are still, I don't think anyone has been impeded by the shelter in place or the government's orders. The MSBA has told us that they continue to move forward. We haven't heard of any alterations to their schedule. We've also gotten information from the MSBA that they believe that fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21 projects will hopefully continue without much of a change in the economics. They rely on the sales tax for funding, so clearly the MSBA is going to have a significant hit to its funding. But I think we may be able to get through this without too much of an impact to our project. At least that's what I'm crossing my fingers and hoping. So for now, we're on track. Things are moving along the way they should be, and the only difference is that we're all visual instead of in person. So that's great news. So that's it on the update on the project or process. Does anyone have any questions?
Just a question on that. And I don't know who this, maybe for the project manager, Chin or somebody. Anything else from any of your other projects? More just on like, are you seeing anything else? Are you hearing anything else from maybe any of your other clients or any other projects?
So this is Chen. That I don't know if is Tim online?
Yeah, he's here.
Go ahead.
Tim, do you want to give the update?
Well, I mean, so Tony, you're talking about what are other towns doing, sort of, in this situation?
Yeah, I just mean, are you hearing anything else? Are there any, are suddenly prices coming down? I mean, hopefully prices come down or anything else you're seeing because of in other clients?
Yeah, no, I mean, well, some towns are, have sort of delayed just because everything's thrown everything kind of up in a little bit of a air. But I think it's too early to say whether prices are coming down. I think that if the last recession is any guide, they certainly will once we understand if this is more permanent than just, a blip, and it starts to be more ingrained for a while, and how deep it goes. But I think it's a little it's too early to sort of predict that. I think it's safe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tim, has anyone stopped construction?
Well, the city, as many of you may know, has issued that order. But no, beyond that, nobody, and the non-essential projects in the state are not moving forward. But essential projects, and schools are considered essential, are moving forward under these very sort of significant precautions that are not little. They're not little blips. They're pretty significant for social distancing and hygiene. Elements like that. But those are all our projects in Natick and Middleborough, Medway are all moving forward. So now, and then they had an issue with the carpenters not wanting to get on the workforce, but that's actually resolved itself next week.
Oh, and that was because of protection issues. They felt they needed more protection. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else on the updates? Okay, one more thing on the chair's report. As you may recall, WEAC, which is the Westwood Environmental Action Committee, has been engaged in this process. And I believe at the last SBC meeting, we discussed appointing a representative of WEAC to the Sustainability Subcommittee in an ex officio capacity. WEAC has identified Julie Gervais to be that representative. So what we are going to do under action items is we have an action item to vote Julie in as an ex officio member to the Sustainability Committee. I think that Julie and WEAC will be a great addition to that committee. Will provide us with a lot of great comments, and I think it'll be a good addition. So that vote will be coming up in action items. That's it for my report. I think we're going to move into discussion items. So the first thing in discussion items is we had thought it might be helpful, speaking of sustainability, to sort of provide the SBC with a primer on sustainable design, because we're going to be talking about it in the next few meetings. We really need to make a decision as a board what this project will look like in terms of sustainability. And so we thought it might be helpful just to give everybody a primer on what sustainability design is, what various options are. And so for that, I am turning it over to Doran Whittier. Rob, I believe that's you.
Great, thanks, Maya. Just going to put up on the screen here. Let me know when you can see the screen.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, we're good.
Okay. So today we are planning to go over sustainable design and talk a little bit through some of the jargon, some of the basics around what elements, create a sustainable design and a green building. We'll update the options, review the evaluation criteria, round 2, the next level that we've been working on, and then go over some next steps. So with sustainable design, I'd like to introduce Eric Ruoff. He's a consultant of ours with the Green Engineer. He'll be kind of leading this section of slides here and chime in as we go.
Sure. Good morning, folks. This is Eric Ruoff, as Rob mentioned, with the Green Engineer, Sustainable Design Consultants for the project here. I think I've met the vast majority of you previously in a different capacity, but glad to have the opportunity to come and join today's meeting. And as Rob said, we want to just go over some high-level definitions so the project team understands some of the things that will be discussed as we move forward. And so first, just looking at what's required at the conclusion of this PSR phase for the MSBA. We do have to submit a preliminary lead checklist. We'll talk about that more. We want to develop an owner's project requirements and our basis of design documents. And we do need some input from you guys and want to define those terms. So that's the thrust of this conversation here. So understanding the jargon, just want to make this as simple and understandable as possible and give folks a general understanding of some of the terms that will be used here. Here's kind of the general list of what we're going to go through today. And again, with the goal, just so we understand what we're talking about. So keep moving here. Exterior envelope, what does it mean? Well, it's the walls, windows, doors, roofs, and floors of the building, right? This is the thing that keeps the weather out and keeps the warm and the cool in. And so, right, we just want to make that as robust as possible, understanding that it will impact the performance of the school. So also talking about some of the systems that may be proposed. There's a lot of talk about using heat pumps, right? Heat pumps are basically a system that moves heat in or out of a building using the refrigeration cycle. You can think of this as the AC unit you have in your house, where there's a unit outside that is, in the AC world, moving the heat from inside your building outside. Well, heat pumps have the ability to go both ways and either remove heat from inside or deliver heat inside. And they use that through the refrigeration cycle to be able to steal or get rid of heat based on the simple refrigeration cycle. And these systems use all electricity for heating and cooling, which has some benefit when we talk about decarbonizing buildings and looking to make a building that's ready to be net zero and reduce carbon, the burning of fossil fuels on site.
Right. So this is the alternative to a natural gas heating system. Is going with a photovoltaic supported heat pump type system, whether it's air, ground, or water.
Right. We'll talk about this in the next slide, right? So people talk about geothermal or ground source heat pumps. Geothermal is actually a misnomer. You know, you think of geothermal, you think of Yellowstone or Iceland, where there's actual heat under the ground. What ground source heat pump is again, since heat pumps are moving heat from inside to outside, they have to be able to source that heat or get rid of that heat to the outdoors. And when you're talking about an air source, which you think traditionally of your house, the air temperature fluctuates much more season to season when the ground temperature remains largely constant throughout the year. So there's some increased efficiencies of an already efficient system when using ground source heat pumps. There's also some added costs, right? Because rather than just having the outdoor units, you have to drill wells to create that system.
Right. And again, the benefit here is you're not using any fossil fuels. You're able to support this system using the photovoltaic panels.
Mm-hmm. So talk about net zero. What does that mean? Well, it means at the end of the year, your building produces as much energy as it consumes throughout the year. Our goal is to design a low energy building, and there's discussion about how to make up that energy consumption through linkage to some of the town's initiatives for photovoltaics and making the roof positioned to take on or install photovoltaics on site as well. So energy use intensity, if you've heard EUI, what does that mean? Well, it's the energy that's consumed at the building on a per square foot per year basis, right? And this is just a normalized way to compare your performance of different schools or different buildings in general. And it's a good tool to study and then look at how various decisions, whether it be the envelope or reducing the loads through smarter technology or more efficient HVAC systems, have a knock-on effect on bringing down the overall energy effect of the building. Certainly, some of this is outside of the control of the design teams. You're going to be plugging in your computers and running the school, and so the goal is to also find opportunities to be most efficient with the operation of the building as well. And as we drive down that number, we also then have less to make up on to become net zero. Excuse me. So that's what's showing here, is just looking at more of our traditional building and then what are our opportunities to lower that energy use. So studying compared to similar buildings. This is a range or a number of different other school projects, both existing and in design, and looking at where are we targeting? We're targeting around a EUI of 25, which is an efficient, low energy building, and that's really been the direction we're seeing a lot of school projects in the region. Everyone understands the important, these are buildings that are going to be around for a long time. We want to show a commitment to the next generation, and so doing what we can to drive down the energy use from both an environmental sustainability perspective, but also savings on operations as well. So carbon, what goes into, what are the carbon impacts of a building, right? In general, buildings account for 40% of the overall CO2 emissions in the country. And those are broken down into two pieces, right? There's operational carbon. What's actually the impact of burning the fuels to make the electricity or heat the building? And then there's also embodied carbon, right? So what are the materials that are being used, and what are the associated impacts of carbon generation for that, right? So steel and concrete have a higher amount of embodied carbon, takes more fuel sources to create and deliver those materials, when wood has a lower impact, right? So the team is looking at situations to reduce both operational and embodied carbon. So we talked in the first slide about a few documents that we need to create that help us, fully refine our understanding of our priorities and deliver a project that meets your needs. So there is this owner's project requirements document, this OPR, right? Again, this is a document that should come from the owner that outlines what are the goals and requirements that you want the project team to deliver. The basis of design, on the other hand, is the response to that, right? It's saying, okay, what is the intent of the design, and how does it meet those requirements as outlined in the OPR? And we're going to have a description of all the HVAC systems and design strategies to meet those requirements of the OPR. Then we talked also about LEED. LEED is a whole building green building standard. It looks not only at the design and construction, but also where is the project located, what are some of the attributes of the surrounding area, and it's broken down into a number of categories that have both prerequisites and optional credits that a project can pursue. And it's holistic. Again, it looks at site and water and materials, and also energy and indoor environmental quality here. So we have run a preliminary scorecard for this building. We'll certainly refine it as the design progresses. And what you see here is that preliminary scorecard. There's 3 columns here that we're tracking, right? Those are yeses on the first column in green, maybes in yellow, and no's in the reddish orange column. And again, a lot of this is based on where are we located and what are we thinking are going to be captured in the project itself. We will continue to work with the team and the town to understand what are the priorities, recognizing that the MSBA has a minimum requirement to at least hit LEED certified, which means we have to satisfy all the prerequisites and get at least 40 points. and we understand that there's less emphasis from the town on hitting a higher level of LEED certification, but we're going to continue to evaluate the design and options against all these credits so we can do what's best for the overall team, right? So what are the high-level benefits of...
Hey, Eric.
Yeah.
I hate to interrupt. Can you move your microphone? Every time you move, it keeps rubbing up and down your shirt. Thank you.
I think we lost Eric for a minute.
I'm back.
Oh, there he is.
I'm sorry. Sorry about the mic too. I'll hold it.
Perfect.
That's, I tell you, we're all learning here. Right. So benefits of green building. So we want to run through just some high level pieces, kind of comprehensively, right? We're talking about not only the environment, but what is the impact on human health and well-being. That's becoming increasingly more important and imperative as we are dealing with this situation right now. But it also, a green building is also efficient in its use of resources, and that includes money, right? So we don't want to lose track of that. So, environmental impact, again, we've talked about a number of this, reducing our energy and carbon use, being mindful of our materials that we use. That's not only from just what does, what's the carbon impact or environmental impact, but also what is the human health benefit. We'll talk about that in the next slide. But then also looking at reducing waste during construction and during operation as well. And trying to minimize our use of water as well. And that is both indoor and outside the building. And then being sensitive with our design of the site as well. So improving health and well-being. Again, we want this to be a safe and productive learning environment for students. There's lots of research out there about how sensitive students are to some of the indoor environmental quality impacts, whether it be proper daylight or good ventilation into a building, and a high level of air quality within that space. So we're going to design the building to meet all those individual criteria using materials that are non-toxic, bringing in daylight where possible, looking for opportunities to pull daylight further into the building, and also making the building active part of the educational process, and making it come alive in operation. And the final piece here is the economic impact of this all, right? So we want to maximize our use of renewable energy, which will lower the operating cost for the life of the building. Again, we talked about daylight having educational benefit. Well, it's also certainly going to reduce the need for artificial light and reduce the overall operating costs there. We want to keep the heat in and the heat or cool in. So build an envelope that's going to assist with that. And then just be efficient in our use of water, right? Look for opportunities to capture and reuse water should that pan out. And then really make sure that the building, once operational, is operating most efficiently as possible. So what are our requirements, right? So at a minimum, MSBA project must achieve LEED certified, right? We talked about that being just the 40 points and all the prerequisites, and exceed the base code by 10%. To be eligible for that additional 2%, what happens now is there's no change in the LEED certification threshold. That used to be the MSBA requirement. Now it maintains just meeting that certified level of certification, but you do have to exceed the energy code by 20%. And that is our direction as a team, and we're confident we'll be able to get there. We have a number of studies that are in progress right now. And Rob, I don't know if you want to speak to these.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So right now, we are looking at, again, using a natural gas heating system as our baseline approach. It's condensing boilers, high performance system. As an alternate to that, as we had discussed, we're looking at two approaches to being fossil fuel free. One might be an air or water heat pump, and another one would be the ground source or geothermal heat pump system. And so, and then in addition to that, Eric had mentioned about the importance of carbon. And so we were looking at potentially evaluating timber frame construction versus steel frame. And so that would have a significant impact on the embodied carbon in the building.
Rob, this is Nancy.
Yeah.
I have a question. Is
Yep.
there a difference in the longevity of the building by using that alternative construction?
Which alternative construction? You mean the structural
wood
frame?
versus steel.
One of the benefits of going with a timber frame is that you're using materials that can be that are it's kind of like cradle to grave. You're using natural materials that can be reused and continue to be used later on. We haven't seen
Strength of the building, the integrity of the building is equal.
Yes.
I mean, there's an advantage in not using steel and not needing to wait for it to come from overseas and the expense associated with that. I know that part. I just wanted to know about the strength of the building itself.
Yeah, I mean, anything that's going to be designed will meet the structural requirements of the meet any structural.
These are also not like, this isn't timber frame like wood house construction,
Right.
like very engineered timber frame sort of. If we get into that, we'll get into it in more detail later on. We don't need to get into it much now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's not like residential construction for sure. This is a highly engineered commercially constructed frame system. And so the goal here is really to determine the best approach for the return on investment over the life of the building. What is the bottom line? Is it worthwhile to spend a little extra money on including the sustainable design approaches over the long term? And so that's really what we hope to come out of this sort of study and analysis of these alternates. And so we'll continue to update building committee as we go. Our next step is to meet with the sustainable subcommittee on the 23rd of April. We'll get into more finer detail with that group. And then we'll determine if there's additional dates or meetings that are needed after that.
Great.
Is there anything else on sustainability that we wanted to talk about?
Does anybody have any questions that they want answered?
I have one question, and it might be just that I'm thinking too much. If we go with an alternative heat system, it'll be a redundant system. So you could, if you didn't have it, the natural gas system that we put in place would be able to heat the whole building.
Yes.
That was a yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and at some point, the school building committee is going to have to decide how far we want to go in terms of sustainability. We're not there yet because clearly the sustainability subcommittee needs to meet and understand more, and we'll come back and make certain recommendations to us. But we as a committee need to decide how far we want this project to go. And so I just want, if people could just start thinking about questions they want answered that would help them make that decision. I think that would be helpful because the subcommittee could certainly look at those questions, and I think that the idea is that I think we've said that the goal is to get those 2 points from the MSBA as a baseline, because that clearly goes directly to our reimbursement amount. So I think if that's the baseline of the building, the question becomes, how much further in terms of sustainability does the SBC want to go with this building project? Given all of the factors, and including, quite frankly, the current economic situation that we're in, unfortunately. But so we've asked the architects in reviewing this to present this to us almost in terms of, this option, the risk, the benefit, the cost, this option, the benefit, the cost, this option, the benefit, the cost, like a menu a la carte system. So we will have that information coming. But, if when you're thinking about sustainability, as I said, it would be helpful to think about what would help you make the decision of how far the project is willing to go. And I'm not looking for answers now. It's just something to keep in mind as we move forward, because that will be our task. We don't have, the town doesn't have a sustainability policy, really. It's not like Brookline, which just passed something. There is non-binding legislation. A non-binding article up at the town meeting in June, but that may be a little bit too late for us. I believe FinCom has recommended indefinite postponement on that. That doesn't say that the town still won't pass it. This is, but even if they do, it's non-binding, and we're not going to know about it till mid-June. So,
this is Nancy. I know we talked about that last time. What I didn't add last time, I'd like to now is there is a sustainability component to the comprehensive plan update that is in the works, and we'll follow up on that and get that out to you and for use by the subcommittee in the future, because that is something that I should have mentioned last time.
That would be really helpful.
Guidance.
Do you know when that guidance will be coming?
Well, it's being drafted, and there's been a couple of years of work that has gone into it. I think it's probably going to be close to final stage when we get to June and July. The current circumstances has impacted the planning board's ability to meet, and so it's delayed it a little bit, but it's close to final draft stage. And maybe Chris Coleman, do you want to comment on that at all?
Nancy, you said pretty much everything. It's we're looking at a June-July timeframe for that.
And Rob, is June, July, I mean, I know some of these decisions are going to need to be made sooner rather than later. Does that June, July timeframe work for us?
So, yeah, so in terms of moving forward with a specific approach, we'll need to have that decision made before then, because we'll be submitting to the MSBA in June. So we'll have to have at least an idea of which approach we want to move forward with. However, that will help to inform us as we begin the schematic design phase. And so if we've got, let's say we've got funds allocated for a certain approach going into schematic design, that can be slightly modified after that, just at the beginning of schematic design.
Yeah, I don't want to overstate its benefit, but I think we can work with a draft form in terms of informing the subcommittee work and then thus this committee's work. So we'll follow up on that with everyone.
Okay, great. And Nancy, it looks like you are, I know that we had talked about either you or Chris joining the sustainability subcommittee, and I think it looks like you are going to be the town sort of voice on that committee, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so maybe we can talk more about that next week at the meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing, there was some benchmark. I mean, it's always good. I know there's probably extremes on both sides of where communities go, but it'd be good to see the last 30 building projects where they came out on some of these metrics, or whatever the right number for over the last few years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We have some data that we can share. A lot of it is predicted EUI, not yet operational.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, Eric, to have even some examples of predicted versus actual, just so people can have an understanding. I mean, that is part of the discussion that we will be getting into is what, we touched on that briefly, but what's the impact of the actual user and how they actually use the building versus what is the kind of design or predicted energy use.
Sure.
So that might be helpful to share.
Sure. We have some data, and getting actual performance data from some of our projects is one of our initiatives and more challenging than you actually think. And certainly, keep in mind that a predicted performance is like the MPG of your car, right? You can drive it to get that miles per gallon, or you can hypermile it and get more, or you can drive it like a lot of people in Massachusetts do, and you're never going to hit those numbers. So keep in mind.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else before we move on to options? Okay. So just sort of recapping where we are currently at the end of the PDP phase. The committee narrowed down the options. So we've eliminated the addition renovation to the Hanlon, addition renovation to the Hanlon Deerfield enrollment. And so we've got a renovation for 315 students at the Hanlon, a new school on the Hanlon site, 2 variations of new schools with the Hanlon Deerfield population on the Hanlon site. We have an addition renovation for the Hanlon Sheehan population on the Hanlon site. And we have 2 new options for the Hanlon Sheehan, one on the Sheehan site and one on the Hanlon site. And so this is the graphically, basically what I just went over. The sheet that shows kind of in total those remaining options that we're continuing to look at. And so just kind of walking through each one. Today, I'm really just going to show you what's been updated since PDP. So really nothing's changed on this. This is just identifying this is the base repair renovation, the Hanlon School. On the all new at the Hanlon site, one of the things I've located the past site plan here so you can kind of get a sense of what's changed. So here we've changed the routing to be just a single entrance into the site. One of the reasons for that is that one, we've been able to maximize the field space, and number 2, also felt that there could be a confusion if we have 2 separate entrances without being connected. If you have someone that's new that's coming to the site, they go up the wrong loop, and then now they have to go back out to the street and then turn in the correct loop. And so it really seemed to make sense to consolidate that to be one loop or one entrance drive. So in this site plan, we've got the entrance coming from the south. The southern end allows us to actually view the entrance. We've rotated the building slightly so that you can have a little bit more of a view of the front entrance. So we have our parent drop off and our bus drop off and service.
Rob, you're fading out a little bit. Can you just speak up a little bit?
Sure.
Thanks.
Yep. So we've got the fields out in front towards Gay Street. This was something that was discussed quite a bit from the public in some of our past meetings, is trying to locate most of the fields towards Gay Street with we've got some parking down here for community access, and so it makes it simple and easy for the community to access this area. And in the back, we've got some play areas associated with the classroom or academic wing. And in terms of the floor plan, it's really essentially the same as what we've been looking at. In terms of the tree configuration, one of the things that we did, one of the, I guess, major moves is that we flipped the tree, upside down. So we've got, in the past concept, we had the gym down on the southern end. And while looking at that, what we felt was that with the southern exposure, it would really be casting a shadow over the entrance area. And so by flipping it in this direction and putting the gym to the north, that allows to have to have the sun exposure, as you're entering into the building. We also opened up a little bit of these wings. We flared these out a little bit to give more room in between each of the wings than there was previously. So that allows us to each of these wings to have a little bit more space. We've got we're planning for a playground, some sort of a mixture of hard and soft playscape outside of the cafeteria, a kindergarten playground, and then some outdoor learning spaces. Exactly what those are, we haven't entirely defined yet, but we have some ideas and we'll continue to go through that. So here we've got, in this concept, we come in through the north, and this allows for this sort of approach to the school, and then the parent drop off over here. One of the nice things about this approach is that you could potentially put a gate or some sort of crossing here after the buses drop off, so to minimize any potential issue with students coming across here. Although it will be, there's also access around the end here down to the fields. But we feel that during the day, most of the activity will be up here. This is more after school and community based. Also understanding that the fields are going to be covered with snow, or won't be used as much from November to March. So this is the alternative of this scenario. We looked at coming in from the south as well. So one of the nice things about the southern entrance is that you've got a little bit more of a sight line on Gay Street. So through the northern entrance, the road kind of curves a little bit here. Both are still acceptable and have the appropriate sight lines. This one just has a little bit more or further distance of sight.
Hey, Rob, can I ask a few questions?
Yeah.
This is Brian. I'm seeing two different play areas. Are the play areas by the school, by the woods, anticipated to be the play areas for playground use during the day, recess, and the play areas up towards the street are not necessarily?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the dashed gray lines, are those kind of walkway paths or sidewalks?
Yes, thanks for bringing that up. I forgot to mention that. So the dashed gray lines are intended to show and appreciate the fact that there are a lot of walkers with the Hanlon area, and so acknowledging that we're trying to indicate potential walking paths for students. So we might anticipate kind of a meandering nice walkway that would lead up to the front entrance. Alternatively, there could be a path that goes directly up the side of the road here and lead up to the building. And these play areas are really just placeholders. That's also up to further discussion. Do we want to have these want to be structured play areas, or is this just a flat grassy surface that are multi-use? We're also indicating a basketball court. We don't know if that's something that's desired, that wants to be here and down more in the community area, or does that want to be up, closer maybe behind the school or someplace else? But this is just our first blush attempt at kind of throwing this out to you, see what you guys think.
Okay.
Rob, your voice is fading out again.
Sorry.
Be strong, Rob. Be strong.
Yeah, I'll try and work on.
So these these would all have the options for both. So to have the recess play areas closer to the school on the wood side, right? And then those other play areas could be optional community play areas.
Yes, exactly. These would be directly associated with recess and use during the daytime, whereas these would be more of the community use area.
Okay, great. And I loved what I think the landscape designers were talking about during the community forums, that with these play areas that are located towards the woods, there's a great opportunity for science engagement or engagement with nature associated directly with the playground. So I think that's a great opportunity.
Yes, exactly. And that's also one of the other reasons why we flipped this. The land slopes down in this direction, and there are some wetlands beyond, over down here. And so one of the thoughts is that, this would be a nice viewing area and nice access to those wetlands potentially. And then out to the field or out to the woods.
Hey, Rob.
Yes.
This is John. On the bus loop, would that be, I know we mentioned it before, a parking lot where we could actually park the school buses instead of up at the high school?
Yeah, I mean, we could, if that's something that's desired, we could potentially add some additional spaces over here or somewhere on site. Maybe it's down here towards the road at an area where a number of buses could be parked.
John,
if that loop was actually a rectangle, couldn't you park most of the buses right there, because they wouldn't be there during the drop-off pickup periods?
John, I think that I would like to ask the school building committee to make a decision on whether to make that as part of the requirement for the project or not, and then it's easier for the design team to react to that.
Yeah, I don't think we've had that discussion. Emily, do you think that there's a need to park the buses in a location other than the high school?
We definitely do have that need right now. So yeah, because we park the buses at the high school right now, it takes up a tremendous amount of room in our lot, and we don't have sufficient parking for the number of students and faculty and staff, which is causing some stress in the neighborhoods across the street from the high school. So yeah, if there's an opportunity to alleviate that, I think we should look at it.
May I request that the Westwood Public School take a look and then give the design team a ideal goal of X number of buses of this particular size, then we can then they can react to it.
Yep, Lem and I can do that. Great.
Thank you.
Mayor, this is Chris. Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
So just in regards to the fire lane, and this would go for all locations, and I know some designs that you have in your presentation show a fire lane. I don't know if anyone has spoken to Chief Deckers. If you haven't, I suggest you do, because the fire lanes need to be 360 and paved. So they should be connected and paved. And my suggestion is if you reach out to Chief John Deckers, he can certainly meet with you and discuss the needs that they may have.
Yeah, I think we were going to schedule a meeting with fire and police. I don't think that's on the calendar yet, but that's a good point. Rob, at what point do we need the exterior layout finalized for the PSR? I know the MSBA doesn't like changes to the building, but what about the exterior? Does it make sense to wait until we have a final option and then engage in those conversations? Because or do we need to do that in this phase with all of the options?
Well, ideally, what we would do is if we can understand which direction the building committee is going in terms of one of the options, what we do need to incorporate into the PSR is the preferred option. We need to have that identified in the booklet, and so in that we will develop a little bit further that particular option and show a little bit more detail in terms of fire lanes and exact amount of paving and that sort of thing.
Right, but I think that when we were having discussions about the building and the layout, you had mentioned and Jason had mentioned that the layout of the building as sort of proposed during this phase really, if that's the selected option, can't really be changed once we move to schematic, because the MSBA doesn't like that. I just wanted to know if that same concept applied to the exterior and the landscaping and the
Not
sort
really.
of plot plan.
Right. No, there's a lot more flexibility in the site, for us
Okay.
to modify things and shift things and add things. I think what's more important is that we have money allocated for, let's say hardscaping or playground areas, and we have that money allocated as placeholders, and then we can play around with the actual design later on.
But if we're moving forward with these designs, once we have the final selection and the SBC votes to approve it, we can then engage fire and police and make sure that the bus line and the fire lane and everything is in compliance. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
I just don't want to waste their time reviewing plans that we won't actually move forward.
Yeah, Maya, this is Brian. That's true. I think for planning purposes, though, I agree with Chin. It's a pretty important decision because the footprint that bus parking would take up is large, and also cost
that we need. No, sorry, Brian, to interrupt you. I absolutely agree. We need to know that now. I'm just talking about engaging with fire and police.
Sure. Yeah,
in terms
I agree.
of the specifics about the lanes.
I agree.
But I absolutely agree. If we're going to park buses here, we need to make that decision very quickly.
Because planning and cost, it's the paving, but it also affects, I think, the discussion of geothermal and the discussion of drainage on the site and those systems. Yep. Correct, Rob?
Yes.
Excuse me, if I will certainly defer to you guys. You guys are the professionals in this. I actually like number 7, but the concern I have is based on my conversation with the chief. I just don't see how the fire lane is going around the entire building. So whatever you guys determine, I just wanted to raise that point to you. Thank you.
Yeah, from our perspective, a lot of times what we've been able to do is to integrate. So for example, if you can imagine this play area out here, there's a portion of it with hardscape, so where kids are playing hopscotch or that sort of thing, and so that might be an extension of this, but it's really identified as playground area, and it might have a gate here, for example. The same thing may continue around. There's a pathway, if you will, for a fire truck to go through the playground in an emergency, but it may be fenced off or gated off. And so, we'll have to take a close look at that and have the discussion with them to see, what exactly does that look like. And the other thing that we've also done with other school districts sometimes is using reinforced grass pavers, so that there's an integrated reinforced system underneath grass area that's in a playground. We've reviewed that with other fire departments, and they have found that acceptable for certain sections of the circulation around the building. So we'll continue to have that discussion with the local officials.
Okay. Just so you know, he has emphasized to me paved. So what you just described to me, maybe this is something that you guys can work out, but based on my very brief conversation with him, that approach may not satisfy what they're looking for. So again, want to raise it as early as possible. Thank you.
Yep.
If I could jump in here, Don Walter, if anyone who has seen the Sunita Williams School in Needham, it's a good example of what Rob's first thought was, where we use the play area to be part of the emergency vehicle access around the building. And when you're back there, you wouldn't even know it was part of the emergency access because they're using it on a daily basis for play activities. So there's very creative ways of doing it. So it's not just a road around the building, but it certainly satisfied the public safety's needs. And we'll confirm that with them for sure.
I think for the Doran Whittier team, that you just need to start planning that and maybe starting to indicate on the site plan as you progress, so that
Sure.
to show that yes, this is being kept in there, and then there will be some overlap in terms of hard play surface and such.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. So moving on to the inside of the building, again, we've been tweaking some of the various spaces. The library here is a little bit more of a focus point at the end of the building with a view out to the woods. It's right now we're showing kind of an integrated stairway, but previously it was right in the middle of the floor plan. So we're kind of envisioning that this may be a reading area. The steps could be like a stepped reading story time type of area, but also connects the two levels of the library from the second floor to the first floor. These extended learning areas would have views out to the outside and a connection between the main entrance and the rear part of the building. Again, we flared these out a little bit to give some more space between the academic wings. So looking at the backwards E concept, the main difference, as we've discussed before, between the tree and the E is that the public space is separated from the academic space a little bit differently. In the tree, all of the public space is over to one end. In the backwards E, we have the public space all on the east side, and the academic wings all on the west side, with a central spine going down the middle. These obviously have doors that would enable these wings to be locked off from the public area. This also has this access of entering and then exiting out to the back as well. Both scenarios anticipate or look at the possibility of students coming into the building and then maybe coming out to a play area before school starts, or accessing the gym or the cafeteria before school starts, but always having this sort of clear connection to the woods and to the exterior spaces. So one of the big changes that we made from the previous site plan was, again, consolidating into one entrance drive, but we also looked at what is the experience when you come into the drive. You want to be able to see the entrance, and so that's where we came about having this layout of coming in through the north side so you can see the entrance as you're approaching. Have the parent drop off and the bus drop off. And again, and here we flared these out a little bit as well, giving additional room in between each of these wings, and made some minor modifications here, some refinements to this art area here, of creating a gallery space and a nice connection between the art and music space, with the music space right behind the stage area. Going on to the ad reno of Hanlon for 685. So really the concept of the site really hasn't changed very much. You can see here we've kind of consolidated a little bit, tightened up the roadway a little bit closer to Gay Street to give a little bit more space for play areas, and indicated the number of fields that we've been talking about. Each of these options, we're trying to fit a little league field, 11 versus 11, and a 7 versus 7 soccer field on each site. Again, the floor plan is about the same. This is the tree concept for the 685 students. So this is essentially the similar plan as the previous, except in this concept we've left the gym to the south, and just to have an alternative for you to consider. Certainly we can flip this and put the gym to the north, just like in the other plan. but we wanted to explore this and see how this played out. So it follows a similar sort of site circulation as we've shown in the scenarios where we have the gym on the south side. Is the majority of the parking has that direct access to the gym for community and event type spaces. There's some additional parking here as well, and this would be a service drive entrance to the kitchen. And this is the older plan, again with the library in the center here with this integrated space. And then the Hanlon Sheehan 685 new on the on the Sheehan site. So one of the major changes we've made to the site here is that instead of coming in off of Pond Street, we reviewed this in detail with our traffic consultant, and really it makes the most sense to come in off of High Street, so the parent drop-offs would be here. As such, it's reduced the size of a soccer field here because of that. But the site circulation, works better than we were showing previously. We've also slid the building down, so we're clearing the wetland buffer area here. So that's another restriction that we've got to deal with on this site. The core area in the middle, we're anticipating utilizing Westland Avenue as a service area for deliveries only. So there really shouldn't be very much traffic there, but it allows direct access to the back of the house. And then we were trying to see if we could fit in a little league field. It's pretty tight. Don't know if this would actually work in reality. It may even be a slightly smaller field than a regulation little league, but wanted to try and see if it would fit in there. And the floor plan really is very similar to what we've shown in the past. Kind of fine-tuned the shapes here of the extended learning areas for each of the academic wings. So moving on to evaluation criteria, unless there's any questions on any of the options.
Hey, Rob. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Alison. I was going to just read your chat question. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I just had a question on the tree option with the gym at the south side, whether it was an option to move the entrance north of the office to mitigate, and whether that was explored at all, and if so, if it would mitigate the shadow problem.
Yeah, one of the reasons why we were trying to locate the entrance here is to have this sort of separation between the private and the public area. I mean, we can certainly flip this and put the admin here and the entrance here. We were also trying to use this as kind of like a lobby space, gathering area for the cafeteria and the gym during large events. It's nice to have kind of like an overflow space directly outside of those larger areas. So that's where that was kind of doubling as that.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Any other questions on any other concepts or options that developed? So moving on to the evaluation criteria. So I've got, let me pull up the spreadsheet here. Can everybody see that? Everybody see the spreadsheet?
Yep.
Okay. So this is the PDP shortlist. We've kind of gone over this at the last time with the evaluation subcommittee. And so there are a number of groupings here that we've created as a continuation from the PDP, but further expanded them into subcategories. So here we've got education, which covers educational guidelines, growth and future, outdoor learning and connection to nature, impact to other schools. We've got a site category that covers circulation and parking, access to fields and site fit, town impact, which incorporates redistricting, traffic, and community use, security and sustainability and construction, logistics and impact. Those all fall into this sort of miscellaneous category. Then we have a cost category, which with overall cost, the net cost of town for all three schools, and then busing and operational costs. And so I'll go into further breakdown of that in a minute. And what we've also reviewed with the evaluation committee is utilizing a weight multiplier. So each subcategory would utilize an additional weighting factor that would be applied to how each of the options are scored. So all the options are across the top here. And so this was discussed in good length with the evaluation subcommittee. So we've identified educational guidelines as 15, growth and future 5, 5, 10, for a total of a subtotal category of 35. The site totals up to 5, the town impact 20, the miscellaneous category 15, and cost 25 for a total of 100. Wanted to use 100% is a simple way of understanding the percentage points. So each option will get scored, 5 to 1, best to poor, and so that would get applied and multiplied by the weighting factor to come up with a total score. So as we look at each of the questions, we've got under the educational guidelines, how does each alternative support and align the educational experiences as outlined in the guiding principles for each option. So, outlined here is just a brief summary of those guiding principles that were developed. And so, how does each option address those? How well does the building organization support community and collegiality among students and staff? How well does the alternative retain the small school feel? Looking, to the future, does it support potential future growth and building expansion, over the next 70 years? Looking at outdoor learning, are there outdoor learning opportunities and strong connections to nature? Impact to other schools. How does the enrollment impact the size of the other schools in the district? How well does the project address equitable class size? How well does the project address educational delivery across the district? They all fall into that educational category. And looking at the site, circulation and parking, what's the proximity of parking to the main entrance? Does the site support an appropriate number of parking spaces? Is the circulation route clear and easy to understand? Is there good separation from pedestrians and buses and cars? Is there safe access into and out of the site? In terms of access to the fields and site fit, is there clear access to outdoor learning? Does the scale of the building fit the site? Is it proportionate to the site that it fits on? And then in terms of town impact, we pulled out redistricting, which I think was kind of a subcategory to traffic. And we pulled that out as its own category here because we knew that it was very important from the public perspective. We heard that quite a bit during community meetings. And so under this category, to what degree does the project retain neighborhood communities? What are the redistricting impacts on busing and thinking about travel time, number of students that might be impacted? And then how well does the project meet building utilization goals? In terms of traffic, what's the impact to the neighborhood and the town? What about walkability? Does it improve or person, the walkability. There are a large number of students that walk to their schools today. What's the impact of the project? And then community use. To what extent does the alternative provide benefits to the community, such as sports fields, community space, and gym space? And then these categories, security, every building, every concept really is going to include, state-of-the-art alarm systems and so forth, and access in and around the building. The bigger question is, how well does the building support a clear separation of public and private zones? How well does it support a controlled and limited public areas after use? And what's the relationship of the front door administrative area to sight lines, to parking, and people approaching the building? In terms of sustainability, how well does the building and the site support the sustainability goals? How well does the building organization and position on the site support academic classrooms with north and south solar orientation? These are elements that we were trying to integrate into each of the concepts. The existing, the addition renovation projects make it a little bit more difficult. In the logistics and construction impact, what's the impact of the students, parents, and faculty during construction? How difficult is the phasing and site logistics? What's the impact to neighbors and neighborhoods during construction? These are all important factors that the evaluation committee felt were important to consider. And then in terms of cost, which option has the least total cost to the impact to the town? And then this net cost to town for all three schools. This was something that was discussed in great detail with the evaluation committee. What's the overall net capital cost of the town to address all three schools, Hanlon, Deerfield, and Sheehan? Really considering the cost of benefit. So, for example, we know that if we were to address one of the buildings, there's still need to be done at the other two. This is something that we're aware of, that the public is also aware of as well, that all three schools are in need of some upgrades. So in terms of the long term, and the long view. So another example is if two schools are addressed educationally, and how does that compare to only one school being addressed educationally? And then in terms of the overall fiscal benefit of the MSBA partnership, how does one option compare to the other in terms of MSBA funding and again, cost to benefit? And then busing and operational costs. What's the overall transportation operating cost impact for both the project and for the remaining schools? So just looking at it on an annual operating cost perspective. So that's the kind of the overview. I'll open it up to discussion or questions.
Thanks, Rob. I just wanted to make 2 points. First, I just wanted to let the larger committee know that the evaluation subcommittee had significant discussion regarding this criteria. We met twice, and we discussed not just these subcategories, and what are these questions that belong under each subcategories at length, but we also had a lot of discussions around the weighting and what are the priorities and what we feel that for education, for example, has the highest number of weighted points. It's at 35. The site has the least because through our discussions, we felt that the other things, the town impact, the cost, those were more important than the site itself. So there was significant discussion. And at the end of the day, I think we were all comfortable and felt good about not just the weighting, but also the drilled down criteria. The second point I wanted to make is that We were also looking at this as a tool to help us tease out differences between the options, because some of these at the high level scored, if you recall, had the same exact score. So we really needed to get into the nuances of the project and the designs and figure out how we could tease out the differences between these. For example, the 315 Hanlon new build would score very high in the old rubric because, you know, it meets a lot of these criteria, but there are significant issues with it. So that was the goal of the subcommittee. And as I said, I feel that we had a lot of great conversations around the criteria, and that the subcommittee is comfortable with the weighting, with the questions, and to the extent we could, we feel we addressed each of these categories pretty extensively. But of course, we want to know what you guys think.
May if I could just add one comment. I agree. I think that the subcommittee had a lot of really good discussion in the process of developing those questions. You certainly start to think about a lot of issues. And I also just want to emphasize that we really thought quite a bit about the input that we've gotten from the community at community forums in thinking about what needed to be included in the evaluation criteria. So I'm feeling comfortable that this matrix reflects those concerns or those interests that we've heard from the community as well.
Yeah, that's a great point, from the community and from the educators as well. So that's a very good point. So does anyone have any questions about any of this?
Just a quick question for whoever's scrolling. Could you scroll to the impact to other buildings, that subcategory again? Thank you. One thing I was thinking about is whether the weighting of that might be changed by the situation we find ourselves in. It's just a question to consider.
That's interesting, Allison. We had a lot of conversation about that category and what it should be weighted. And I think what we landed on is that sort of the issue is represented in two different places on the matrix. So you've got impact to other schools there, which is talking about some educational impacts because it's in that yellow category. But then down below in the cost section, the issue comes up again in the net cost to town for all three schools, which you'll see is weighted as 15 points as well. So you've honed right in on, I think, the areas of the rubric that we had the most discussion about yesterday.
That totally makes sense.
Okay.
I'm trying to, I'm just struggling personally to try and get my head around, like, and not fully, I feel like we don't fully know yet what the current environment's going to do long-term. So, I think it's great if there's some weight built in that kind of tries to account for that.
Mm-hmm. I think that it does, but certainly we're, open to feedback if there are concerns about that.
Anyone else? Last call. Okay. So if there's nothing further on either the sustainable design primer, the updated options, or the evaluation criteria, Rob, did you want to talk about next steps?
This is just a recap. We've shown this at the end of the meetings in the past, and just wanted to highlight this as sometimes it's nice to know what's coming up next. As you mentioned earlier, there's a community presentation on redistricting on the 30th of April. May 29th is the next school building committee meeting. We'll plan to talk about each of the options with the costs at that meeting. And then the June 2nd is another community presentation where we will present the options or the preferred option with the cost at that meeting. And then the June 11th will be enrollment and redistricting vote. And then June 12th, a preferred option vote.
Actually, Rob, I think we changed that yesterday. So June 11th is still the school committee enrollment and redistricting vote. But I think on June 12th, the SBC is going to review sustainability options with cost.
That's right. That's right. Yes. You're right.
So on May, so for this school building committee, the next 3 meetings are going to look like the May 29th meeting is going to be the presentation of the final option that we're going to, as Rob says, review the recommended option with cost. The June 12th meeting, we're actually going to devote that to sustainability. We're going to review the sustainability options with costs. We won't be making any decisions or any on the final option at June 12th. We did put a June 19th meeting on your calendars, and we will think we're going to need that. So at the June 19th meeting, that's when the SBC is going to do 2 things. They're going to authorize or vote for the preferred option, the final option, and also vote for a budget for that final option. And the budget will have sort of a base project budget, and then there'll be this sustainability component, just a general budget of a sustainability if the SBC decides to vote, and that would be in addition to the base building cost. So that's what the next 3 meetings for the SBC look like.
Now I'll update this slide and then send the updated slide to John so that the updated slide will reflect that when it gets posted.
Perfect. Great. Any questions on next steps? Okay, so I'm going to now move into the action items. And we have a number of votes to do, and we have to do a roll call for each one. So hopefully we can go through this pretty quickly. So the first vote is to appoint Julie Gervais from WEAC as the ex officio member to the Sustainability Subcommittee. So can I get a motion for that?
Motion, Ken.
Second, John.
Okay, any discussion? All right, I'm going to move to the roll call. Ken?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Chris? Chris Coleman? Is Chris still on? I'm looking for him.
Yeah, Chris needed to go off. He had another meeting he had to go to.
Okay, thanks, Nancy.
Yep.
Sarah?
Yes.
John Cummings?
Yes.
Charlie? Oh, Charlie, we need you to unmute. All right, I'll come back to Charlie. Pam?
Yes.
Abby?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Lemma?
Yes.
Josepha?
Yes.
Has Carol joined us?
No.
Okay. Michelle is not here. Tony had to drop. Emily?
Yes.
And Kate?
Yes.
Okay. Charlie is back. Let's see if he's unmuted. Hang on, I think he's calling his technical support. Nope, still muted. And we can't unmute you, unfortunately. Nope, all right. We'll come back to you, Charlie. Or actually, I think we have a majority. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. John, how many are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? Yep, okay, so we have a majority vote. So the motion has carried. Oh, and I'm voting yes, so the motion has carried. The next vote is to adopt the evaluation criteria as recommended by the evaluation subcommittee, which we just presented. Can I get a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call. Ken?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Charlie, I think you're still muted. Pam?
Yes.
Abby?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Lemma?
Yes.
Josepha?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
And I am a yes, so the motion has carried. Third vote is to approve the minutes of March 20th, 2020. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All right. Ken?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Oh, Charlie is holding up a yes. I think he's holding up something. I think it might need to be verbal. Pam?
Yes.
Abby?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Lemma?
Yes.
Josepha?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
And I am a yes. Motion is carried. Next vote is to accept the evaluation subcommittee meeting minutes of February 6, 2020. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second. There you go.
Okay. Ken?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Acknowledging Charlie. Pam?
Yes.
Abby?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Lemma?
Yes.
Josepha?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Kate? Kate, you there? Oh yeah, I hear you. Okay. And I am a yes. Motion is carried. And the final motion is to approve our invoices for the month. So let me pull that up. So we have a total invoice amount of $76,866.25. This is for the period ending March 31st, 2020. That's comprised of an invoice from Compass Project Management for $18,670, invoice from Doran Whittier for $45,696.25, an invoice from our redistricting consultant, Cropper GIS LLC, for $12,000, and an invoice from Westwood Media Center for taping for $500. So again, total is $76,866.25. Can I get a motion to approve these invoices?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Ken?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Abby?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Lemma?
Yes.
Josepha?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
Okay. Finally, we do have new business, just one item. Doran Whittier has requested.
Maya,
Yeah.
I need you to vote on the invoices.
Sorry, I vote yes on the invoices. And the motion is carried. Thank you, John. What would we do without you? So moving on to new business, I have one item. Doran Whittier has requested a daylighting consultant. As they mentioned in the sustainability piece of the presentation today, daylighting can be a very key component to sustainable design. And they feel that bringing in a daylighting consultant this early on will really assist them in making sure the building is oriented correctly and has the proper, maximizes the use of daylight on the site. The cost is $5,000. So this is something that would come, we have a certain amount of uncommitted funds in the feasibility fund. And so we do know where this amount will come from. So we, if we're going to approve this, we need to take the vote today so that they can engage the daylighting consultant. So I wanted to open it up to discussion. If anyone has any questions, or Rob, is there anything you want to add about the consultant?
Well, I just wanted to note that, you know, this is a consultant that has a lot of experience in daylighting, and what they bring to the table is a significant amount of expertise in integrating, you know, natural daylight into buildings. And so they've got the software, they have the expertise and experience to help us maximize the ability to bring in the natural light into the appropriate locations in the building in an appropriate way, both for energy efficiency, which was the primary focus, but also for you know, well-being and the feelings that you have when you come into the building. So coming in early at this early stage is really important because we're able to integrate it fully into the design.
Yep, and I think there's always been an intent to bring in a daylighting consultant. So I think the request is really just to bring him in now.
Exactly.
So I don't think this is, you know, there have been discussions about this anyway. So, but it's just the timing of it. So,
right.
Any questions, or anyone would like any more information about this? Okay, I hope. Our people, can I get a motion to approve the daylighting consultant for an amount not to exceed $5,000?
I'll move.
Second.
Okay, Ken,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Charlie's here but still muted. Pam?
Yes.
Charlie says yes. Abby?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Lemma?
Yes.
Josepha?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so the motion is carried. That's all I have for new business. Does anyone have anything else? Nope. Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Oh, wow. Okay. Ken?
Yes. Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Sarah? John? Charlie?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Abby?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Lemma?
Yes.
Josepha?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Motion is carried. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. That was a lot to get through.